Hey, Raider Nation. Thank you for joining us on the Only Nation podcast, brought to you by the Raider Ramble and sponsored by Betway, and also Signables. My name is Heidi, but you may know me as Kevlar Prom Dress or even Raider Ladybug. I'm here with T3 Raider Facts, and we're ready to talk some Raiders football together.
All right, Heidi, another depressing week. We're going to talk about things, and we're going to talk about what's left for the Raiders and the fan base moving forward. So let's get to it.
Today on the show, we will talk about the Raiders game versus Jacksonville, and then we'll look ahead to the matchup with the Colts at Allegiant Stadium this Sunday.
Okay, Raider Nation, we would love to hear from you. So here's how you can get in touch with us. Give us a call on the Only Nation podcast voicemail line at 904-701-8667. That's 904-701-8667. You can also check us out on the web at onlynationpod.com.
Here's the latest Raider news.
The Raiders, now 2-6, who were shut out at New Orleans last week and then spent the week regrouping in Bradenton, Florida, dropped a 27-20 decision to the Jacksonville Jaguars after jumping out to a 17-0 lead and then going into the locker room at halftime, leading 20-10.
Another depressing outcome, and one more example of the fact that the Raiders just can't seem to put together 4 quarters of football. They put together 2.5, well, actually, almost 2 full quarters of football, and then things kind of fell apart. So we'll talk about that during the course of the broadcast today. We'll figure out what went wrong and what can be corrected.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but when we were up 17-0, I actually had absolutely no confidence about it. I was like, 17-0, that doesn't mean anything. So I don't know if I've been trained throughout the course of the year to not expect it, or if I'm just a beaten down Raider fan that has come to not expect it. All what I know is, I saw that 17-0 lead disappearing.
I'm a huge Raider fan, but I will admit to you and to the rest of our audience that I actually won $75 on the game by betting against the Raiders.
Ooh. Well, on that note.
Still a fan, though. Still a big fan. I just didn't have any confidence like you just echoed.
Well, I can't say that I blame you. $75 is, that's almost a tank of gas now.
Well, it's going to buy us dinner tonight.
Well, there you go. Going to McDaniels, huh?
Probably.
Davante Adams had 9 catches in the first half for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first half. In the second half, he had just 1 catch for 0 yards.
And I'm sure everyone has had a chance to hear Davante Adams' comments in the presser following the game. And the main thing that came across is that if something is working, why not stay with it? He was hot. And in fact, even on the Locked On Jaguars podcast earlier in the week, when they were on with your boy Q, the guy with the podcast said, we have no answer for Davante Adams. We can't stop him. So they're even admitting it and recognizing it there. And the Raiders took advantage of it early and often in the first half. Why they didn't stick with it, I have no idea.
I have an idea. It's because Josh McDaniels sucks.
Okay, well, there's that theory.
Not theory, it's a fact.
Okay. I have a tendency to agree with you there.
Okay. Raiders linebacker Divine Diablo injured his right forearm on the team's second play. He was carted to the locker room and quickly ruled out for the rest of the game. Fellow linebacker Denzel Perryman left the field in the third quarter to get his ribs taped, but he only missed a few plays.
And, of course, we're still missing Nate Hobbs. And with Diablo gone now, of course, he's now been placed on IR. We'll talk about roster moves in a bit. But, again, Diablo has been a help in the run game, but he's a liability in the pass game as well. Now, he and several of the linebackers have contributed a lot in terms of tackling, but the problem is a lot of the tackles have been made with them chasing down the play, not them coming up to make a play. And that's something that just continues to hamper this team. They need a linebacker who's going to come in and be a presence and be a thumper consistently and come up and make the plays at the line, or come in and make plays behind the line of scrimmage, not continually chasing down plays, which is what we've been seeing.
Exactly. We've been seeing Blake Martinez come in at the very end to save the play, or Denzel Perryman. The problem is they're coming in at the very end to save the play. We need to have them coming in at the beginning, stopping the play.
I'm tired of seeing their jersey numbers and names, which means that you're seeing them from the back, chasing after the play and running it down.
Amen on that. I definitely agree. Derek Carr was 21 of 36 for 248 yards and 2 touchdowns, with no interceptions, and he was sacked twice. His overall QB rating for the game was 99.2.
And I will point out that during the course of the game in the first half, his QB rating was around 141. And most of those stats that you mentioned, as far as the completions go, happened during the first half. Again, a lot of that went to Davante Adams. Why they didn't continue to pass the ball, even the short passes. And even on some of the short passes, Derek was off the mark. He was just rattled. And again, as we mentioned on the last podcast, Jack Del Rio had mentioned this, that, Derek Carr often gets the yips. And sometimes he feels pressure that's not there. There were a couple of times that the offensive line broke down. There were a couple of times that they gave him good protection. And he hit several throws, but he was off the mark on quite a few others as well.
I mean, he looked great the first part of the game. Him and Davante were humming along. And then, for whatever reason, the Raiders just go away from it. And it doesn't make any sense. It just happens.
And yet the real head scratcher is toward the end of the game, where you would think that the high percentage would be to run the ball and pick up yards and advance the chains. Then they start passing the ball way down the field. It just doesn't make any sense. The play calling just is totally nonsensical to me.
Yeah, it was 2nd and 2, and all what they needed was 2 yards to get a fresh set of downs. And what did they do? 3 miserable passes. You mean to tell me if you would have given Josh Jacobs the ball 3 times, he wouldn't have gotten 2 yards? Or even a quarterback sneak? In 3 plays, in 3 running plays, they would have gotten those 2 yards.
And even on the 4th down play, the check down to the back coming out of the backfield was wide open.
Yeah. On Monday, the Raiders announced the signing of free agent cornerback Sidney Jones IV. Jones, drafted in the 2nd round of the 2017 draft by the Philadelphia Eagles, played with the Eagles through 2019, then had a brief stay with the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2020. And then moved on to the Seattle Seahawks, where he played in all the games in 2021 with 11 starts, recording career highs in tackles with 66 and passes defensed with 10.
Well, I'll tell you, particularly with the Raiders' recent failure in draft picks, if they can get something out of this guy. And Sidney Jones injured his Achilles tendon, and he was just a victim of numbers in Seattle. They hated to let him go, but the other guys they drafted were just playing well, and so he was expendable. So if he can come back from injury, he may not be a starter, but he can be a really good depth piece and maybe work into a starting role next year if they're able to hang on to him. So I'm excited about this piece because he is still a young guy, and if he overcomes that injury and comes back strong, this may be a really, really good addition, a sneaky good addition to that defensive backfield.
Well, all what we need is a serviceable depth piece, and it certainly seems like he is capable of being one. So welcome to the Raiders, Sidney, and we need you.
We need somebody with the last name of Jones who actually shows up and plays.
Burn.
Shots fired. Sorry about that.
Man, you are shooting shots everywhere.
Shots fired. Yes, I know. Well, I mean, I have the last name Jones, so I have to defend my name, you know?
Yeah, there you go. All right, so where do we stand right now?
All right, let me take this on. As I look back on the expectations I had for the 2022 season, maybe I was staring at fool's gold, or maybe I was drinking too much of the Kool-Aid during the preseason. The Raiders had really come together as a team. They played well over their heads last year, and they landed Derek Carr into the playoffs for the very first time, and the Raiders for only the 2nd time since 2002. Last year, they won a lot of close games, and they all believed in each other. Then, after the playoff defeat, Bisaccia was gone. Mark Davis went in a new direction. Some new pieces were added, making the team more solid on offense, or so we all thought. A bookend All-Pro defensive end was signed, and Max Crosby was re-signed. Since then, a first-round pick was sent packing. Some bags of money were handed out, some of which were questionable calls, and the team started to get in the habit of blowing big leads. 3 times they have lost games after building leads of at least 17 points. Now, in a season in which many people thought they would be 5-3 or 6-2, they stand at 2-6. Raider Nation is melting down. Fans are demanding that Josh McDaniels be fired, Derek Carr run out of town, and the rest of the team and the season simply be burned to the ground. But did we really think that with no veteran presence added to the offensive line, an aging quarterback whose skills seem to be declining, an all-pro defensive end who appears to be done, a potential all-pro tight end who can't stay healthy, and a perennial all-world receiver who can't get the ball enough, not to mention an offensive line that is suspect, a defensive backfield that still needs help, a linebacking core that's average at best, and a defensive front with no real names and no real power? Did we really think this was all going to work? Well, even in my worst-case scenario, I had the Raiders at no worse than 4-4, and wins against the Cardinals and Jags would have covered that. So here we are. How many wins can this team actually get? Can the team stay together, or will it start to fall apart? And we're starting to see some of that already. Who stays and who goes? And I guess the 2 biggest questions I have is what happens with Derek Carr on offense and Chandler Jones on defense.
Well, so you're saying you don't think they'll be 10-7?
I'm saying now that I don't think they'll be 10-7.
Okay. I don't think they'll be 10-7 either. That's where I had hoped they would come in, but, well, I don't see that happening now.
At this point, I would settle for 7-10.
That would be probably an optimistic look at the rest of the season.
Right.
And it's not like the Raiders have a difficult schedule. They really don't. Coming up against the Colts, there's a lot of joking around amongst Raider fans, even dedicated Raider fans, that Raiders aren't going to be able to pull it off. And that's playing against a high school coach.
Yeah. There is not a team on this schedule that the Raiders can't beat. Now, the question is, will they?
Yeah. And what happens with Derek Carr and Chandler Jones? Well, Derek Carr, I think, is a very good chance that he will not be a Raider next year. I love the guy. I love him as a player. I love him as a person. But I don't see his contract being able to be covered. He is signed through a few more seasons, but it costs the Raiders very little to drop him. I think it would be a cap hit of $7 million around there. And you think that is a lot of money. Yes, that is a lot of money. But considering that if you pay him, it's like $40 million, $7 million does not seem like a very big cap hit.
It is affordable.
Yeah. Chandler Jones, I don't think it'll make a difference because I don't think he'll show up at the stadium.
Yeah, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of people lined up to take on his contract either. So the Raiders are just going to have to eat that. Derek Carr, they can get out of his next year, and it's going to cost him a little bit, but not nearly as much as you said as it would if they re-signed him again. And of course, my belief is you've got to bring in a young quarterback. The Raiders haven't drafted a young quarterback in years. A good young quarterback who can be the heir apparent. And again, that's something different. So Gruden would never do that. He brought in Peterman and threw all of his eggs in that basket. Of course, we had Mariota coming back, but again, we haven't drafted a guy that we can groom and say, okay, this is the guy who's going to take over the franchise. And that's got to happen in the next 2 to 3 years because Derek's skills are diminishing. I love Derek Carr. I always have, and I've defended him up one side and down the other. So if anybody reads this into the fact that I now suddenly hate Derek Carr, not the case. I just see that his skills are diminishing, and he cannot last in this toxic relationship with this new coach. Something's got to change, and Derek can't continue with this. I'd like to see him go and latch on with another team and be successful, much like Matt Stafford did when he left Detroit and went and won him a Super Bowl. Now, I would hate to see Derek Carr hoist a Super Bowl trophy with another team, but if he could, great for him. So be it. He gave the best years of his life, football-wise, to the Raiders, and they didn't really produce all that time he was there. So I hate that all that was wasted. But, comes time where you have to make a decision, and I think at the end of this season, the Raiders are going to have to make that call.
You say his skills are diminishing. I'm not so sure. I think his environment is just so toxic and so negative that he's falling apart on the field. And whether that means he's not as good of a player anymore, I don't want to say that. I just think Josh McDaniels sucks. You know what? I just thought of a title for this episode. Josh McDaniels sucks. Okay.
I think that would get a lot of attention.
Episode 111, Josh McDaniels sucks. And, it's apparent that Derek Carr does not like Josh McDaniels. It's apparent that Davante Adams does not like Josh McDaniels. It's apparent the team doesn't care for the guy. The team liked Gruden. The team loved Bisaccia. Bisaccia was a leader of men. Was he a good head football coach? No, he wasn't a head football coach, to begin with. But he was a good leader of men, and the men loved to play for him and would fight for him. And I don't see that happening with Josh McDaniels.
I will remind everyone that after he finished his unsuccessful stint with the Denver Broncos, he spent 1 year as offensive coordinator for the Rams. And what record did they have that year? 2-14.
Sounds about right. All right, and moving on, just wanted to let our listening audience know we are waiting to hear back from Signables to hear who our lucky winner is. So as soon as we hear back from them, we will let you guys know. And now, T3, why don't we hear your top three for the week?
T3's top three.
All right. I'll still call it top three, even though it's kind of a head scratcher here. So here is this week's version of T3's top three. Number one, the remainder of this season comes down to two things. Let Derek Carr open up the playbook enough to try and salvage what the team can for the rest of the season. Give Josh Jacobs enough quality touches so that he can earn a nice contract next year somewhere, and start getting some of the other receivers some looks. Number two, a lot has been said over the past 2 weeks about Darren Waller, most of them not good. Now, I still believe in the young man. I just think it's a team tragedy that we're just not going to get to see the best that he has to offer because of his injury history. That second-round pick that Green Bay allegedly offered for him is looking better and better, though that ship has now sailed. And number three, even if the Raiders end up with a top 5 pick in next year's draft, I hope they don't make a mistake and grab a quarterback early. This team has too many other glaring holes, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. We'll talk more about this between now and next April, but I'll say it again and again. Defense, defense, defense. And that is this week's version of T3's top three.
So you really think that even if they get a top 5 pick, they shouldn't get a quarterback?
Absolutely. I think they should wait and do it in round 2 because they have to turn the attention to the defensive line. They've neglected it far too long, and this is where they need to make their stand. And they already brought a couple of young guys in this year, but they were mid to lower round picks. But what we have seen is that there has been no defensive pressure at all. Quarterbacks are standing back in the pocket and just waiting all day. We're making quarterbacks like Andy Dalton and Davis Mills look like all world beaters, and that can't happen. And what can start that to stop from happening is to bring in a quality high-round defensive lineman. We haven't had that since Chester McLaughlin way back in the day. That has to change. It's got to change, and it's got to start with the 2023 draft. I'm making that call right now.
You're sounding more and more like Peggy Holmes.
Well, she and I kind of share that sentiment. So I definitely would grab a quarterback in round 2, unless you can trade up and get an additional first-round pick. But round 2 is where I would focus on a quarterback, the best available. But you can't bring in a first-round quarterback with all the other needs that the team has right now and expect them to do anything.
Okay. I really don't know much about the quarterback class coming in, so I don't want to comment one way or the other. I don't know if there's going to be a decent enough quarterback available in the second round. So once we get closer to the draft is when I normally look at that. However, this season, I might be looking at that a little bit sooner.
I think we all will.
Yeah. We want to be able to talk about something relevant.
I will guiltily admit I have already started looking at mock drafts early.
All right. And then the remainder of the season coming down to 2 things. Yes, let Derek open up the playbook. The problem is Josh McDaniels is trying to make him play as a system quarterback, and he's not a system quarterback. And just let him open up the playbook and fly. I would love to see him be successful with the Raiders. I recognize that might not be possible. And if it means that he goes somewhere else and is successful, so be it. I will still be a fan of his. Now, that doesn't mean I will root for him when we play against him. Don't get me wrong. And yeah, let Josh Jacobs run. He has earned a 5th-year option. I agreed with him not being given the 5th-year option just because of the price of running backs nowadays. But I think that he's definitely earned a contract extension somewhere. Whether that's with the Raiders or another team remains to be seen. I think he would like for it to be with the Raiders. But if Josh McDaniels is still around, maybe he won't care. And as far as Darren Waller, I really like the guy. I do have faith in him. But I have also been saying things about him that were not good. Now, that doesn't mean that I think he's faking an injury or anything. But if anybody has been watching the Silver and Black Ladies Night, you have heard Peggy and I talk about behavior in Darren Waller that is concerning. And we are both concerned about him being mentally in the place to play the game. He doesn't seem to be mentally as focused and as driven as he used to be. And that concerns me. I am sure he probably does have an injury. Overcoming an injury, especially a leg injury, is going to be difficult in the National Football League. But there are just things that concern me about Darren Waller, and I hope he's able to overcome it. But right now, things don't look promising for him. I know that the Raiders are hoping he'll be back to play, possibly against the Colts. So let's see what happens. Maybe he'll have a career day and he will put all the naysayers to shame. That's what I'm hoping for. And yeah, that's what he's going to do. He's going to have a career day against the Colts and everyone's going to shut up. Yeah, that's what's going to happen.
I hope you're right, and I just want to tag one little addendum on here, and this is addressed directly to Josh McDaniels, and Mr. McDaniels. I hope you listen to this objectively and subjectively as well. If you really don't like Derek Carr, or if you really believe that Derek Carr doesn't like you, and you really don't believe that he's going to fit into the plans for the future, it would benefit you and the entire team and all of Raider Nation to let Derek open up the playbook now until the end of the season. Let Derek prove the type of quarterback he really is. So if you really don't like him and he's able to put up the numbers that I think he would be able to put up, maybe he could get you that first round pick, or maybe at least a high second round pick. So it's a win-win situation for you. You're going to let Derek be the kind of quarterback that we all think those who believe in him can be if you just let him do his thing. And if you don't want to carry him forward beyond this season, let him earn his stripes. Let him earn himself a high place to go somewhere else and play. So Josh McDaniels, that is my challenge to you. And I hope all Raider Nation hears that. And when they hear me say that I don't see Derek Carr fitting in with the Raiders' plans next year, knowing exactly why. I'm still a big Derek Carr fan, but I think he deserves better than he's getting. And I think now's his time to be able to step up, and somebody needs to allow him to be able to do that.
Hear, hear. Give us a call at 904-701-8667. Leave us a voicemail or text message at that number, or send in a message via social media, and we'll share your thoughts. And what is going on with Raider Roots this week, T3?
All right, I'm in the process of putting together Raider Roots for the year 2009. It might not make it out this week, but I promise it'll be up soon. It's hard to believe that this will be episode number 60, and we're closing in on the end of the series. We just got a few more episodes left after this one.
I know, it seems really weird. It seemed like it was going to take forever, just a year and a half ago.
Yeah, we were back in the 70s, and then we got through the 80s with Marcus Allen, and now we're getting up toward the end.
Yeah. It has been a pleasure to work on the series with you, and I am looking forward to doing the next episode for 2009.
Well, let me give you an additional shout out too, because without your help on all this production, it would not be possible. So let me give you a huge thank you and shout out to all of our listening audience here and right now, because again, without you, Raider Roots would not be possible.
And well, thank you. And without you, it would not be possible either.
All right, let's keep this love fest going here.
Okay. Let's keep it going with our little quiz. Did you know?
All right, it's time for another edition of Did You Know? In this segment, I will ask Heidi and all of our listening audience a Raiders-related question with a list of answers to choose from. It's multiple choice, so just give it your best guess. Here is this week's question, and I gave you a hint on this one here. So here's the question. Tim Brown has the most career all-purpose yards for the Raiders with 19,434, a record that will not be broken anytime soon. Second on that list is Marcus Allen with 12,797. My question is, who is number 3 on that list? Is it A, Clem Daniels, B, Fred Biletnikoff, or C, Cliff Branch? Heidi, what is your answer?
That hint's supposed to help?
If you look at it real closely, it is.
I was a young Raider fan when these guys played.
That's true.
I was a little baby. I don't know how long.
That's true. If you look at longevity of career, at the top 8 players on this list, this person only played in 87 games. So if you think about of the Raiders I listed, the ones who played the fewest games.
Well, I know Cliff Branch won all 3 Super Bowls.
Right.
So that's already a big chunk of games.
That is.
And Fred Biletnikoff, he also seemed to have a long career.
He had a 14-year career.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go with the shot of A. Clem Daniels.
You see, you pay attention to the hint and you got it right. Yes, Clem Daniels, that's the answer. And for the rest of our listening audience, again, of the top 8 players on the list, Clem Daniels only played in 87 games. But in those 87 games, he's the only person who averaged over 100 yards per game at 106.5. And that is this week's version of Did You Know?
And now we know.
Now you know.
A little bit of Raider Roots knowledge there.
There we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for a very special edition of Heidi's Heroes.
Okay, Raider Nation, this week's hero is a very special man. He is a special man who passed away this past week, and he is the first punter in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm just going to read this article written by Tom Lamar on Raider Maven, and it just talks a little bit about his career. The hero for this week is Hall of Fame punter Ray Guy. The greatest punter in the history of the game of football, an NFL Hall of Fame member, and a Las Vegas Raider icon in Ray Guy, passed away at age 72. Ray Guy, who played his entire 14-year career with the Oakland Los Angeles Raiders and is considered the greatest punter in history, died last Thursday morning in Hattiesburg, Mississippi at the age of 72, following a lengthy illness. Guy was the first punter ever selected in the first round of the NFL draft, when the Raiders chose him with the 23rd overall pick out of southern Mississippi in 1973. And he also became the first punter voted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, being inducted in 2014. He is also a member of the College Football Hall of Fame. Fittingly, much was written when Ray Guy was enshrined in Canton about how his election as the first true punter created a full roster of players in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame President Jim Porter said in a statement. Too often overlooked, however, was the man behind his powerful right leg. Ray was a warm, humble Southern gentleman who represented the game, the Raiders organization, and the Hall of Fame with dignity and class at all times. A truly gifted athlete, he could have been a star in Major League Baseball or pro basketball. Fans of the NFL thank Ray for choosing to focus on football. Guy, a native of Thompson, Georgia, is also a member of the Bay Area, Southern Miss M Club, Mississippi, Georgia, and National High School Sports Hall of Fames. His death was first announced by his alma mater, the University of Southern Mississippi. The Southern Miss fam mourns today following the passing of Golden Eagles great Ray Guy, who died Thursday morning following a lengthy illness, Southern Miss Athletics said in a statement. Guy averaged 44.7 yards per punt as a senior at Southern Miss, the best in the nation in 1972. He kicked a 61-yard field goal during a snowstorm in a game at Utah and intercepted 8 passes from his safety position. That led managing general partner Al Davis of the Raiders to draft him in the first round, and he was as great as advertised. Guy was selected first-team All-Pro 6 times and second-team twice, played in 7 Pro Bowls, and was chosen to the NFL's 1970 All-Decade Team, the 75th Anniversary Team, and the 100th Anniversary Team. During his Raiders career, Guy punted the ball 1,049 times for 44,493 yards, a 42.4-yard average, while having only 3 kicks blocked in his career. However, he didn't always punt for distance, as Guy often pinned Raiders opponents deep in their own territory. Guy never missed a game during his 14-year career and never had a punt returned for a touchdown. He had a streak of 619 consecutive punts before having one blocked, and also holds a record of 111 punts in postseason games. Having Ray Guy meant having a chance to make the playoffs and win the Super Bowl, Raiders Hall of Fame cornerback Willie Brown said. He was just that strong because of his ability to punt. When we needed a long punt, he did it. When we needed a short punt, he did all that. He kept opposing offensive teams back in the hole a majority of the time. As a defense, you have a shot any time he's in the game punting. We didn't worry about whether they were going to get the ball because no matter where we were on the field, a majority of their offense usually started on the other 20 or inside that sometimes. It's always great to have a weapon like Ray Guy. Guys' longest punts from scrimmage went for 77, 74, 72, and 71 yards. And in his 11 seasons in which the NFL counted punts inside the 20, he had a total of 209. After a 1977 game in the Astrodome, Houston Oilers coach Bum Phillips accused Guy of using footballs illegally inflated with helium because he had never seen anyone hang kicks like Guy did, and that ball was hanging up there too long. The Raiders had used a new ball for every punt, adding to Phillips' suspicion. So the Oilers sent one of the footballs to Rice University for testing, but nothing unusual was found. During the 1976 Pro Bowl at the Louisiana Superdome, one of Guy's punts hit the gondola and video screen 90 feet above the field. That's the single thing I get asked about the most, said Guy, who punted for the Raiders as they won Super Bowls 11, 15, and 18. It was nothing like pre-planned. The Ray Guy Award is awarded to the best college punter in the nation every year. And Ray Guy, that's why you're my hero this week. I'm sad that you're my hero this week because I wouldn't have thought about mentioning you before your passing, but your passing makes everything so obvious that I just have to take this opportunity and name you Heidi's hero.
And I will just echo your sentiments and mention three things. Number one, we are recording this episode on November the 8th, and Ray Guy's number was number 8. How about that? Secondly, and I don't know which Raider exactly said this, but I want to credit it to Phil Villapiano. It may have been said by many other Raiders as well, but he said when we trotted out on the field on defense, we knew that we didn't just have 11 guys. We had a 12th one because we had Ray Guy. And then number three, the third thing, I just want to conclude by saying Ray Guy was not just a guy. He was the guy.
That about does it for this week on the Only Nation podcast. If you'd like to help support the show, you can send in a donation at paypal.me/onlynationpod. You can find me, Heidi Stabbert, on social media as @KevlarPromDress on Twitter and Instagram, or Heidi Stabbert on Facebook. You can also find me on YouTube on Captain Jack Rackham's channel every other Tuesday night. I join the DC wench Peggy Holmes and Andrea Trask on Silver and Black Ladies Night.
All right, Raider Nation, as our podcast continues to grow, we would like you on board with us. So please contact the show. Send us your name and address so we can send you some free Raiders swag and podcast stickers. Call us and tell us what you want to know. Throw us an interesting nugget that we can use on one of our upcoming episodes and become a part of what we're doing here. Remember, this is the Only Nation, and we want you to be a part of it. So call us at 904-701-8667. That's 904-701-8667. Call us now and join the Only Nation podcast family. There are two easy ways to find me on social media. You can send me a tweet at T3_sports703, or you can hit me up on Facebook at Tom, that's THOM Jones. I want to also thank all of you for continued support of the Raider Roots Project, which, again, hopefully is going to be converted into a book project. I'm busy doing research on a specific segment of Raiders history, which these next few episodes will be a part of. So please give me your feedback on the episodes and tell me what you want to know more about. I look forward to hearing from you.
As always, we look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, everyone, go Raiders.
And remember, regardless of the record, we are not just a nation. We are the only nation.
Raiders.
Win, win, win. Just win, baby.